Hi, this is Kelly Crabb, and this is my AEP 858 Module 15 Truman Elementary Case Study. First up is Category 1, Problem Identification and Analysis. So first, what do we know? Truman Elementary is a pre-K to 8th grade school. There is 700 students attending, and there's 3 classes per grade. There's 1 preschool classroom. There is 15% of the students that qualify for free and reduced lunch, and 5% of them are ELL students. For academic information, we will get into that a little bit further, but some of the things that I noted was that reading is taught through basals for about an hour each that are kind of broken up throughout the day, so it's not a concurrent hour. Instruction in these classrooms are generally a whole group. They do not do small groups, and there is no individualized plan for students. So what do we need to know? Right here, I have a diagram from Victoria L. Bernhardt on the multiple measures of data. So in our case study, we are given the demographic data, but we're not given the perception data. What does other people really think about the school? We do hear about parents and their problems at PTO with their child's reading skills, and they believe that their child isn't reading very well, but we don't know what is going on with teachers or students. As far as student learning is going, we do get the very bare minimum. There's not very many assessments. They only do 1 real assessment, and we don't get much more than that. The school process is not there either. I don't know the procedures that go on within the school. There might be a few different types of reading or whatever program that they use. The only information that we're really given is that the teachers use a basal and teach off of that. So we don't get very much information past demographics and a little bit of student learning. So I have some other things that we need to know. I want to know, why is reading lower than math? And what is it based on? Is it based on standardized tests, or is it based on national testing? What is it based on? Did the teachers have other assessments that they use? And what are those assessments that they use? What other things do the district require in order to see what the students have mastered? The other thing I wanted to know is, each year's reading scores decrease. Why? What is happening that is allowing that score to decrease? What has changed between the years? I also want to know what the parents' perception of that school is. Like I said earlier, what do they think about the drop scores? Why are they so concerned? What can they do to help? Some other questions that I want to ask is, what data talks does Truman Elementary have? Do they have PLCs where they talk to one another? Do they have larger data talks? How do they know that they are not meeting assessment requirements? I want to know also, how is data incorporated in the classroom? Do teachers actually look at the data and manage what their lessons are throughout that time? Or do they just kind of ignore it? I also want to know, how is the community involved in the learning of students? Parents seem to be active with their PTO, but there's only a few parents that usually go to PTO. So how do parents help their students outside of the classroom in order to help guide them? Because we are a team with parents, and we need to make sure that we're both on the same page. My final question here is, what are the economic needs of the students? They said that 15% are free and reduced lunch, but what do they need in order to apply some of these things? 15% doesn't necessarily mean that these students are higher as far as socioeconomic status. I kind of want to know where that information is. So first off, I'm going to be talking about the problem. One of the biggest problems that I read was during the reading specialist part. She went through classrooms and wrote a letter to the principal in order to share what she had learned throughout this time. So in reading this, she talked about that reading is split up and there's no consistent time. One of the things that she stated was that it might be in the morning, but with lunch and recess, it might also be back there. Is there a consistent time that they can do this? That is really important because it guides the students into their learning process. And if you split up that time, their brains are gonna be split up during that time. Something else listed in there with the reading specialist is that they are not changing from the basal. It says in there that they read the basal and then basically they have students working on a workbook page. It seems like they are not applying what it is that they're learning. There's no specific standard that they are addressing. There's no skill that they're. And what are they doing to differentiate? In the PTO note, it's listed that parents are frustrated that kids who are higher are getting frustrated and they don't want to be in school because they're not getting their needs met as well. Everybody is receiving that same education. They're not depending on performance of the students, and some of the big problems are that they don't do small group. They focus on whole group in order to achieve their lesson instead of working around the whole student. And another problem is just that the parents are concerned, and they kind of have a right to be concerned if they feel like their students aren't getting the benefits that our school. They claim that their students are not engaged and things are either too hard or not hard enough for them. So that is some of the biggest problems that we're seeing by the reading specialist. All right, now I'm going to be talking about category 2. I'm going to propose a plan with an appropriate strategy for implementation. So before I do that, I want to talk about the 5 essential questions that Victoria Bernhardt had listed. The first statement is, where are we now? Number 2 is, where do we want to be? 3, how do we get to where we are now? 4, how are we going to get to where we want to be? And 5, is what we are doing making a difference? I'm going to be answering some of those questions after I propose my plan and implementation to see if we actually follow what needs to be done. So for my plan of action, I would first research professional development opportunities for staff to learn new to literacy curriculum. So I would do a bunch of research to see which programs work best for staff so that we can have engaging curriculum, as well as finding different books that have levelized readers so that those kids that are challenged. Next, I would show the data to staff during meetings. I would identify the changes in the data over time. So basically what I would do is I'd take that data off our case study and I would present it to staff during meetings, and I would share with them some of our findings. We'll identify some areas that we did well over on the last 3 years and some areas that improvement. I would make sure to share with staff that it has decreased progressively over the 3-year time period. Then I would have the reading supervisor discuss her observations. She would discuss some good things that she found in areas of improvement. The reason I would be doing this is, first, we're going to be talking about good things. There's a lot of teachers that do good things and they really don't know when they're doing a good thing. So it's good to put a spotlight on any sort of success. Then she would talk about those areas that she needed improvement, basically the objects that she gave to me as the principal. And we would identify things that we can improve and how we can improve them. Also, I would require teachers to attend professional development opportunities. They would reflect on what they learned and create lessons following the new information learned through the training. As teams, discuss what strengths and weaknesses a lesson has. They would edit and try again to see what is most beneficial. The reasoning I would do this is because we as people learn from practice and reflection and evaluation. So if they're going to these trainings and they're learning different skills, which are very important, they can then go ahead and reflect on what they're doing and what they can improve on. And as teams, you usually can do better when you are working with one another just because other people have ideas that maybe you don't. And so in order to create cohesive, coherent lessons, we have to work together as a team because that is what we are. We are a team helping the well-being of our students. Afterward, teachers would teach their lessons to students and assess to check for understanding. So those lessons that we went through and reflected and evaluated on, teachers would go ahead and go and teach them. And then they would write a reflection afterward in order to see what worked, what didn't, and how students responded to their lessons. This is basically a morale boosting thing. They'll probably see the difference between what they used to be teaching and now. Hopefully, if it's done correctly, the assessment mastery skills will go up. It's going to take a long time to do it, but with a lot of practice, the teachers are going to be happier about it and the students are. Then teams would come together and discuss the differences. So that's what I was just talking about, that we have teams go together. We talk about what we like and some more areas of improvement in order to make those lessons even better. Finally, teachers would incorporate all that they learned into lessons. The reading specialist would evaluate and give advice. The teacher will then reflect on lessons. So in this case, the reading facilitator or reading specialist will go ahead and continue observing. This might cause some irritation from some teachers, but as long as they see improvement in their students, it's something that I think most teachers will be happy to do. Some of the strategies to implement, some of the teachers are going to have to analyze data and discuss strengths and areas of improvement. They're going to have to supplement their knowledge using professional development and evaluate their learning and understanding and reflect on the process. All of that is what I talked about during the action plan. It is very important to take what you learn and put it into a lesson and then reflect on that. If they're doing this, their lessons are going to increase in quality and their students are going to be happier for it. And then hopefully the data is going to be higher for that as well. So I'm back at my 5 essential questions. My first question is, where are we now? So right now we have some upset parents. We have low data. We have curriculum that is not based around every single student. Where do we want to be? We want to be in a community where we are all working together as a team to make the most quality that we can from lessons in the general school atmosphere. How do we want to get to where we are now? Well, that is what I discussed in my action plan. I want teachers to focus on what qualities of their lessons need improvement. I want them to focus on different sorts of data so that they can get a better understanding of what their students are lacking and close those gaps that they need to close. How are we going to get to where we want to be? As far as that, we need a lot of practice, we need a lot of reflection, and we need a lot of teamwork. With that, those things will fall into place. Is what we're doing making a difference? Well, the students are going to be happier, parents are going to be happier, and I think teachers are also going to be happier. If it goes the way that we need it to, the student is going to have more quality in their learning, and the assessment data is going to increase. Category 3, resolve the issues based on promoting the success of all students. So first up is, how are we going to promote student success? When we're doing this, we're going to increase the engagement in all students. We know that increasing engagement also increases learning, which also increases data. So we need to make sure that those kids are engaged what they're learning, they're applying it. Second, I'm going to focus on different levels of learning so that we can engage all levels of learning. So we have our low kiddos who need some extra support, our middle of the road kids that can get extra support, and our high kids can be supported and improve what they are learning. We then need to identify areas of improvement. So if we are struggling in a certain part in reading, say we're having difficulty in phonological awareness, we can focus some of our lesson plans into phonological awareness and how we can incorporate that in the classroom. Same thing, if our sight words are low, we can do more practice in sight words. We need to promote continuous improvement for reading levels, make sure that students with low reading levels are getting the text that they need, and the high kids are getting the text they need as well. That way they can develop the vocabulary they need, as well as the spelling that the parents were concerned about. They can get all of that through reading. Next, to resolve the problem, teachers will incorporate more differentiated learning. Teachers will use small groups based on skills. So like I was saying before, if we're having problems with phonological awareness, we can see where the kids are based on those skills. So if a bunch of kids are on, say, final sound, we can have teachers have groups on final sound because somebody might be on final sound while another group is on CVC words. They can get the skills that they need and not have to repeat a bunch of other skills that they've already mastered. We need to ensure interventions for students. So these interventions are staff interventions, teacher interventions, just depending on the student, 5-minute tap outs or longer, just so those students are getting extra practice that they might not be getting at other dates. We need to have a dedicated time for reading in the morning. The reason that we're having some problems is because there's no dedicated time. Teachers basically put reading whenever. So that's putting across the message to kids as well that they don't need to learn reading because we have to do lunch or recess or whatever it is that is distracting them from that. Teachers will create more engaging hands-on learning. A lot of those problems that were happening were students were not engaged because all they really were doing was worksheets. With more engagement becomes more learning. We also need to discuss data and PLCs while talking about areas of improvement. So together as teams, we are going to be talking about that data and how to further help our students with their learning. Category 4, debrief the problem by reflecting. So first off, my thoughts and feelings. By incorporating all this change, there's going to be some staff who are apprehensive about the change. They're not going to want to do all of the things that are asked of them. But I feel that if they understand what kind of changes and then they see what kind of changes happen, that they are going to feel more accepting of those changes. They're going to be huge changes and they're not going to be happy about it. The second thing is, will it be difficult and take some time? So how difficult is going to be to incorporate different professional developments, different materials? People are going to be irritated, like I said earlier, if it is too difficult, and they need time to learn and practice their craft so that they can go ahead and use it on an everyday lesson. So it's not going to happen first thing. Lastly, how much are the materials and the resources are they going to be readily available to staff? Are they going to have to research that sort of things? If they are, that could cause some weariness as well. That would also cause conflict within administration because of the frustration of the teachers. So I think that it is most important to make sure that the teachers are on board with all of the new changes that would happen in order to have continuous improvement. Some of the things that I value is that continuous improvement, making sure that the students' well-beings are taken care of, that everybody is learning, understanding, and that they are feeling comfortable in that environment. I want data that has clear and concise information as to where student skills are. Some of that data that we saw in our case study is not very clear. I don't really know what I'm looking at. I don't know what skills that they are looking at. So if we have a data source where the skills are clearly defined, where the standard is clearly defined, it'd be more useful than if it was something that was not clear, because I can build lessons around something that tells me what standard I actually need to work on and how to work on it. The last thing I value is evaluation and reflection. So if we're teaching a lesson and something went incredibly right, I want to reflect what made that right. What were the students thinking? Did my teaching change? How did it change? And the same thing if the lesson didn't go well. What things did not go well? What could I incorporate for future use? Some issues for further investigation. What other forms of data can be used in the school? As far as that, what databases can we use? Where can we put all of this information that is readily available for staff? How can staff easily access that information? I also wanted to know the social emotional levels of the students, because if they feel like they are bored or they're unmotivated by their learning, they might have some struggles in social emotional. They might not be able to control their emotions, which also is a problem when it comes to those small groups that we're going to be working on, because if they can't work as a team, um, and they never really got to work as a team, they're going to be struggling big time. I also want to know what the financial status is. There was an opportunity for a grant. However, it does not look like the school district could really apply for it just because of the 15% free and reduced lunch. It didn't look like that we were a very low SES school. So I want to know what finances can we get. Do we need to find free resources? Can we pay a little bit of money to make sure that our staff is well prepared? I want a quality staff, so I want to make sure that everybody is trained in our processes so that they can further utilize what it is that they've learned. What other curriculum can we use? It sounds like the curriculum that we're using at this time is not working, or we're just not using it correctly. So I want to know, what can we do to either change our curriculum, or where can we get curriculum? One of the ways that I can do this is to call those schools around me. It doesn't have to necessarily be the ones in my district, but outside of district, see what curriculum that they use and how successful it is, and see if we can adopt that curriculum into the school. The last thing that needs further investigation is, how do the stats compare to those in the district and those in the state? So if the whole district has low stats, there's something that their district as a whole is not doing correctly. So we need to ensure that all of the schools are making sure that they're meeting those benchmarks, and we can work together in order to make those stats higher. But if it's just us, we can work as a school and work on those issues that we see in our school. Also, I want to see what we're at the state, just because I just want to compare the data. Are we that lower than the state, or are we about the same? That way we have some sort of data to land on, and some of that data can show some things that we haven't been utilizing in our school and we can utilize. Last category is the reflection piece. So the first one is engaging family and community. First, I want to create a partnership between the parents and schools. This is something I found from one of my resources from Van Rokel. He said that partnerships and school partnerships are important. If you'll note on the bottom, I put a quote from the Van Rokel article. It says, NEA, National Education Association, believes that significantly more emphasis must be placed on the important roles that parents, families, and communities can and must play in raising student performance and closing achievement gaps. So if we create that partnership between parents and school, we're just going to go ahead and close some of those gaps. We need to work as a team. I would also make a mission statement to share with the community what our thoughts and our goals are. I would involve those PTO members with team building ideas so that they have a voice in the school and they feel like their voice matters. I would invite parents and other community members to read with students just to get them involved with students' lives so the student knows that not just their teacher is concerned about this, but other people around us. And the biggest thing is families and communities will help their students practice. In order to communicate to a large community, we're going to share data from our previous assessments without putting names on there. We're going to create a database in which new data assessments show progress, and then we're going to create reports for data talks and action plans. This way, the community can see the processes and the advancements we are taking so that they can see that we have a plan in place to increase the learning of our students. Policy, laws, and regulation. I'm going to present data to the board, avoiding names from data. I'm going to follow district policies and create assessment calendars in order to share when assessments will be. The reason I'm going to do this is so that we kind of have a buy-in for the district, and it's important for teachers and staff to get a calendar so that they know when their student is going to be assessed again so that they can work on those areas that they need support in. Last year, we're going to be talking about decision makers and ongoing learning. So one of the things that I want is to create an easy action plan and SMART goals. It's very important to create a goal because if you have a goal to work toward, then you're going to have an easier time trying to strategize and figure out what students need because you have a goal in place. I'm going to ensure weekly PLCs and data talks. It's important that you're working with your team, and it's important that you're talking about the data and the whole child and what that child needs. From there, they're going to be improving as far as what the teacher deems as quality work. So their data will increase as the quality of those data talks increase. We're going to continue progress monitoring. And I'm going to continue doing perception questionnaires throughout the year just so I can see how the staff is feeling, how my students are feeling, and how the parents are feeling, because that will increase what our school environment is, which will also increase academics, which will also follow our goals that I stated earlier. I thank you so much for watching my video. I hope that these things would help the Truman Elementary District, and I thank you for watching.